I've got a really sick video to show you today. Remember when Donald Trump briefly had that interim Attorney General Matthew Whitaker? He's the guy that had no business being Attorney General whatsoever, no credentials that would justify being Attorney General. But after Jeff Sessions got pushed out by Trump, but before William Barr was ultimately put in place by Donald Trump, there was this guy, Matthew Whitaker, who was the interim AG. Matthew Whitaker went on the super scandalously sickening and scummy scam of a show, Judge Jeanine on Fox News, and he claimed that stay-at-home orders are equivalent to martial law. Now, we'll talk about martial law in a moment. Here's Matthew Whitaker, and here he is telling it to Judge Jeanine, who seems just riveted by this.
Is well placed to make sure that our First Amendment and all constitutional rights aren't infringed unnecessarily. You know, the Supreme Court has said that any infringement on those fundamental rights has to be narrowly tailored. And so lockdown orders or keeping people in their houses under, what would equate to martial law is just not allowed, and it's not going to be tolerated by the Department of Justice. So I think, you get certain states that are a little more restrictive that I think the Department of Justice is paying a keen eye to right now.
Lockdown orders are equivalent to martial law. So this is as good an opportunity as any to talk about martial law a little bit. What is martial law? Martial law is when the United States or parts of it are placed under military control, often with the suspension of the normal judicial system, which is why habeas corpus is an important aspect of this. So the president can enact martial law federally. Governors can enact state martial law. One of the things that comes with martial law is that habeas corpus can be suspended. Habeas corpus is you have a right to a hearing on lawful imprisonment. It is supervised by law enforcement, rather, the judiciary continues to supervise the actions of law enforcement. You can't just be indefinitely held without being told what the charges are against you and given relatively speedy access to due process. During martial law, the normal process, due process, could be suspended, meaning someone could just be held indefinitely without charging them, including by the military, which often takes or can take a law enforcement role under martial law. So just deploying troops domestically is not even necessarily martial law. If the civil courts keep functioning, etc., it still is not really martial law. But martial law can include courts stop functioning, civil courts stop functioning, the military starts playing a judiciary role, the military starts playing a law enforcement role, etc. Now, there are examples of when martial law has been enacted. You could look at New Orleans in the War of 1812. You could look at after the Chicago fire of 1971, while the fire was being extinguished, martial law was put in place and then it was lifted within a few days. The San Francisco earthquake of 1906, martial law was used to start confiscating dynamite to then destroy buildings that were in the path of the fire to try to prevent the fire from spreading uncontrollably, lifted within a few days. So again, Matthew Whitaker says that stay-at-home orders, he calls them lockdowns, are equivalent to martial law. First of all, the lockdown is not being enforced by force. Grocery stores are open, hardware stores are open, every delivery service, Amazon, CVS, Target, they're all delivering tens of millions or hundreds of millions of items all around the country. You can go for a walk. You can go to the hospital. It's just that, there are some businesses that are closed. People are advised to stay home and maintain social distance. So for someone who was Attorney General to suggest that the lockdowns are even remotely like martial law is dangerous, because we know that there is a large population out there, the gun-toting Trumpist types, who are waiting for martial law to go out and do really horrible things if they believe that martial law has been enacted by their governor. That's the important thing. At the same time, they seem very willing to turn over control of the judiciary up to and including a federal martial law being enacted by their Lord and Savior, Donald Trump, with not much of a realization that during martial law, oftentimes weapons are confiscated, which they claim the government would only do over their cold dead hands or something like that is the way the phrase goes. So there's been only one entity, by the way, that has lobbied for the suspension of habeas corpus during all of this. And it's Trump's Justice Department. I reported to you a few weeks ago, Trump's Justice Department asked, because of coronavirus, we want to be able to just hold people indefinitely without due process because the courts are all stopped up. They're reduced capacity courts at this point in time. So the one body here that has taken any action that would even be associated with martial law is the federal government. It's Trump's administration asking for the effective suspension of habeas corpus. Whitaker is acting like we have going on here what China had, where people's doors were barred shut with pieces of metal that were welded together. We can go out. We are asked not to do so. If it's not necessary, we're asked to cover up with masks. Stores have policies, some here in Massachusetts, that say you can only come into this store with a mask, stay 6 feet away from people. Many coffee shops are even open, but for takeout only. Restaurants are open, takeout only. If this is martial law, it seems martial law is just a lot more boring than anything else. But it is not the dystopian nightmare that Matthew Whitaker seems to be claiming that it is. Dangerous to spread the disinformation.